Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched, where this week I watched Cocaine Bear from 2023. Now, some of you are probably asking, why would you watch this movie? And that's a very good question. To be perfectly honest, when it first was announced as coming out, I was pretty annoyed just on the premise, just because at the time especially, and just in general, we have a serious problem with movies as an art form being constantly cheapened and worsened. And I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but somehow I don't think that Cocaine Bear was ever going to be a really highbrow piece of cinema. Now, far be it for me to say that all cinema needs to be highbrow and well written and literary and all those things, but to me at the time when it was announced, it struck me just how far we seemed to have fallen, that a full-blown Hollywood movie was being made around what amounted to, as far as I can recall, a cracked article from like 2012 or something like that, probably. That's, I think, where I and most people first heard about the real story of the Cocaine Bear, a bear who in 1985 found a bunch of cocaine, ate a ton of it, and then died. And that's the entire extent of the story. And for some reason, somebody decided that that was a good premise for an entire movie. So, insipid beginnings aside, I did not have high hopes for this, and I probably never would have gotten around to watching it or continued to put it off if it had not been brought up in conversation to me earlier again this week. And then, looking through my choices of movies for the week, I was reminded that it was present and available to me. So I watched it, and you know what? It's better than I expected. It's not good, and it's not particularly interesting, but it does manage to do something better than my anticipation suggested, and as well as what the marketing around it basically was. If you don't recall or didn't see it at the time, the marketing was all about how basically it was like a horror film. The horror film marketing of, there's a bear and it did cocaine and now it's crazy and it's a slasher film. And that's basically how the movie starts. I was pretty close to just no longer watching it after the initial scene, the sort of the pre-title scene, because that pre-title scene is exactly what I anticipated it would be. It is very bad. It is not interesting. It is not engaging. It is not performed well. It is not delivered well. And for the first scene with the bear in it, possibly the bear is CGI. No surprise there. And unfortunately, some of the bear's worst CGI in the entire film is at the beginning of the movie. That's not a great look. Also, apparently, the majority of the $30 million budget was spent on the CGI for the bear. And we'll get back into the budget later, but and it was done by Weta Workshop, apparently. But that name has become less and less meaningful in recent years. It doesn't look awful, but it definitely looks like CG. It is not convincing in any way. But I don't know what they expected. It feels like the equivalent... No, that's unfair. I was going to say it feels like the equivalent of the low-budget 90s animals with lip flaps, with animals who talk, because they have post-production mouth movements done to them. It's a bit better than that. It's not that low, but it does not remind me anything of a bear in a lot of ways. So anyway, that first scene did not set the stage well for me. However, the remainder of the film gets better. Again, not good, but better. Weirdly enough, the marketing and the initial premise of the bear is crazy and it wants to kill, and it wants more cocaine, is kind of not the main focus of the film. I mean, it is. It is the glue that holds the rest of the film together, but it is both not the majority of the runtime, and it is the worst part of the film. In actual, like, as I am wont to do with these sorts of things, I always want to fix a film. And so my feeling is remove the bear. There's very little reason for the bear to be present in most of the film. It is not narratively that significant, or at least not in a way that can't be replaced with some other hook to explain some of the things that happen. And all of the worst, like either least compelling or most boring scenes in the film are around the premise of the bear is angry and on cocaine. It's very, very boring. So they just should have done away with it. The majority of the plot revolves around several separate groups of people who all have, in some way, some engagement with the location where the bear is. I'm just going to say what it is because these are all things that are doled out right in the first little bit of the film. One is some kids playing hooky. One is like some like teenager kind of wannabe thug guys. One is park ranger and a couple of other people who are with her. And then one is some coke dealers who want their coke back. And them all meeting up in a like state park or something in order to deal with this situation is a pretty compelling premise on its own. It's all like, how do these people interact? And that's the majority of the film. But for some reason, they felt the need to include the cocaine bear just for, I don't know, a twist, a hook to get you into the theater. But the name of the, I think it's called Blood Mountain, is the location, which I'm not 100% sure, but I would fully believe is the true name of the location where this occurred. There's a lot of weird named mountains weird named locations all over the place, but especially in the Appalachians, there's lots of weird stuff going on in the Appalachians. So you could have just called it Blood Mountain, and that would have been like a little bit engaging, and then you could just have the confluence of all these characters, very disparate characters coming together as the main narrative. That was the most interesting part, was how all these very disparate groups play off each other. But for some reason, they had to include the bear. So here we are. Honestly, I'm not even going to talk that much more about the bear. Like I already said, that's the most boring part of the movie. It's the thing that costs the most. It's the thing that looks the worst. It is the thing that's least interesting. I literally looked away for some of it because it was just like, why are we even bothering? Plus, a lot of it is just like, the bear is going to maim someone in one way or another. And I don't know, it's not even fun as like a slasher film equivalent. There's no reason to be rooting for the bear, which is usually sort of the premise of a slasher horror type of thing, is that there's some reason to be rooting in part for the slasher to show, to have like usually you don't love all of the characters type of thing, right? Um, there is some of that, but not enough. And so for the most part, the bear is just a waste. The gore, as I mentioned, is like, it can be really excessive and it's not very convincing, and it's not funny enough. But we'll get back into why this movie is not funny enough. Well, yeah, I don't want to get too distracted by that. But now I'm all over the place on this. I probably should have taken some notes. We'll just talk about it. This movie is not funny enough. It should be funny. It should be incredibly cheesy. The premise is incredibly cheesy. Why is this movie not cheese-tastic? The idea of having a bear on cocaine is weird enough. The idea of then like turning fiction into, or reality into, this dramatic fiction is very silly. On top of that, this bear should be more absurd. The characters should be dumber. They should make worse decisions. The gore should be more slapsticky and over the top. But it isn't. It's like weirdly, like some of it is very stupid, but it's a little bit too real, at least in the like reality of, oh, this person got clawed and that's how that looks. It's not. It's like there are a couple of comedy gore shots where like limbs do stuff or a body does something silly, but not enough of them. All of the gore should be comedy gore, if you ask me, because otherwise it just looks like you're watching somebody get mauled by a bear, which is not fun. What's the silliness in that? And it has to be silly because it's Cocaine Bear. If you wanted to just make a bear horror movie, that's a different movie. That's not this movie. If you wanted to make the bear a horror movie, you have to get way more intense, because this is not trying to be that serious. It's just incidentally serious. Let's now we'll come back to the realism part of it. The problem is that they don't seem to have good writing or pacing. The performances in this movie, there's some somewhat notable actors in here, including Ray Liotta, who, like, this is one of the last movies he did. The end of his career was not particularly glamorous in the first place, but for this to be like the last thing he did, or one of the last things he did, is kind of a wet fart. And I don't particularly think he's a great actor either, but still, like, I don't know. He's a name. Deserves a little better than this. The people in this movie are not bad actors. There are some notable character actors in here. There are also just some people I've seen around in other things who I think are fine, and they're perfectly capable. But this is not a well-written script. It's not really a well-written script in any regard. The characters aren't that believable. The way they talk to each other is not that interesting or believable. They never have a full dynamic conversation wherever anybody ever has any sort of evolution of character. None of that is present. Nobody's even like really. It's just very boring. Some of the last scenes in the film are some of the least convincing dialogue in the entire thing, in what really should be a climactic scene of like meeting of various groups who all have various tensions, and instead it feels like borderline like a Saturday morning special or Saturday afternoon special. What's the phrase there? The type of, PSA type of stuff, cheesy acting that you'd see on TV in the 90s for kids. It's just bad. And that's really why the cheese doesn't work. I was thinking about this because I say this a bunch these days, of just why wasn't this movie more cheesy? Why didn't it lean more into being serious or being cheesy? Those sorts of things. I've brought this up enough times that I've had to think about it distinctly now and figure out what makes a movie cheesy. Because this movie should be cheese. Nothing about it is written particularly seriously. Nothing about it is like particularly horrific. It should be very cheesy. And it got me thinking about The Dead Don't Die, that movie we watched a little while back with Bill Murray and Adam Driver, and how that didn't really work for me either in a lot of ways. Like, it was a good concept, a good premise, it's just the execution felt weird. And so I realized with both of these movies, it sort of fell into the same problem of, I think it doesn't come as much down to the specific writing. It's less about distinctly the dialogue that's written or the performance, and more about pacing. So I kept seeing these scenes in this movie where a character delivered a line that kind of should be funny, but was delivered in such a way, this isn't really on the actor, it's more on the direction and the framing and the timing, where it should be funnier in context, not because it's not because it's overtly a joke, but because you can create humor with pacing and timing and framing. And I laughed once at this movie, and it was because they actually did it right. And that's what got me thinking about this. I can't even remember what the joke was now, but it was that they had executed it well in the moments, in the timing, to make it hit in a way that felt funny, just because of the absurdity of the situation. And instead, most of this movie, while not very serious, is delivered in a serious way with serious pacing of like, no, we're actually scared of the bear. No, we're actually making stupid horror movie type decisions to keep, not just walk away from the situation. The timing of this door, we're going to open this door because despite very obvious horror movie type signs that it's a bad idea, we're going to do it anyway. All these things. And if they had just timed them differently, if they had just delivered them with a little bit of a sillier framing shot or something like that, then it would feel less like it was taking itself seriously, but instead they just accidentally make it feel like the movie is self-serious. And that's a shame, because there's almost something in here. Even my complaints about the bear could mostly be fixed if it wasn't taken seriously as like a slasher monster. It's completely absurd as a slasher monster for a whole bunch of reasons, including just basic self-preservation instinct things that the characters don't do. Not even, and they're not even cheesy enough bad decisions to make it feel like horror tropes. It just feels like they're just doing things wrong deliberately. It's not fun, bad kind of thing. So you just get a movie that doesn't hit its tone because it doesn't quite know how to be unserious enough. The premise should be deeply unserious, and it just isn't. I know I'm just hammering that home, but that's really the crux of it. Before we get to the rest of production, I do want to talk about the one thing that makes me really one of the things that makes me really annoyed about this film from before it even released, which again is just the very basic premise that they completely deny any kind of reality in this film. I fully recognize that people don't expect this to be a real bear type of situation, and that some people are probably going to know that this isn't actually how the bear behaved or what happened at all. But especially when they do the bullshit of based on true events at the beginning of the film, it especially irks me when it comes to that stuff, because based on true events is the only true event is a bear once did some cocaine. That is the beginning and end of the entire thing. And so I don't expect everybody to have the same knowledge that I have or the same experiences that I have. I have been around wild black bears before. They don't behave like that. And I will give the movie an ounce of credit here that there is one character in the movie who does in interaction with the bear go, that's not how bears behave. Bears are generally fairly docile and don't like humans and just run away. It won't do anything. And that is immediately upended. But the problem with this is that even if you signpost it like that, that is not a heavy enough signposting about reality for my tastes, especially because even if it is a small proportion of people, misinformation about how wildlife is and that what you should do around wild animals and that sort of thing, it's a very small chance it's going to cause any actual real world negative events to happen. But I don't like the idea that somebody could take bad information from this movie and go, oh, bears are scary, bears are dangerous, bears will maul you, these sorts of things, because people should be actually well informed. I know I'm like really digging into the nitty gritty here, and there's a whole discussion to be had about how you should interact with wildlife and even the realities and unrealities of what well-informed people are told about wildlife, because I know what you're supposed to do around these various animals that have been around before, but I've also heard stories from like somebody I knew who has the scars in the back of his leg from where a grizzly just dug its claws into the back of his leg. So I know reality is not always the same as what we're told, even when it's well-meaning. So to have it not be well-meaning, to have it just be graphic disinformation about a bear will attack people is never great. In the same way that people are really scared of sharks in no small part because of Jaws. I never liked the idea of vilifying real world things. It's a little bit like, okay, yes, it's an animal and it can't stand up for itself legally, but what if the movie was instead about a real world person who had actually never done anything wrong, or, that sort of thing. It's just, it rubs me the wrong way, and I never like that kind of content, especially when it's not sufficiently signposted. So anyway, that's the bee in my bonnet about this whole premise. So atop all the other things wrong with it, I don't like that. As far as the rest of the production, it's pretty okay. Like I said, apparently the majority of the budget went to the CGI, which makes sense because the rest of this the rest of this movie looks really cheap. Not in a bad way, not in a they cheaped out on it, they cut too many corners type of way. Just, this looks like a $5 million movie. And that's what it is. It's like a $5 million movie and a $25 million bear. And that shows. And when the bear is the least compelling part of the movie, it just makes me wish they hadn't spent all that money on the worst part of the movie. I don't know why they did that. Even if they wanted to keep the bear in, they could have just had the bear in less and would have brought down the price. So the movie looks cheap. It's made in a couple of limited locations. It's not particularly well lit. It's not particularly well the cinematography is not particularly good. The framing's not good. The lighting's not particularly good. The color grading's not particularly good. None of it is offensively bad, but it's just very meh. This is also apparently directed by what's her name? Elizabeth Banks, the actress. I don't know if she has prior directing experience. I think she does, but I don't know what else of hers I might have seen. Apparently she really liked this premise and was sort of behind the whole thing getting produced. I don't really get it, and I don't think this is horribly directed, but I don't think it's well directed either. So, when you take that all into account, I would have much rather this be a really low budget, $3 to $5 million type of movie, instead of a much more expensive one where the worst parts of it are where all the money went. Yeah. Never thought I'd be necessarily the person to advocate for the type of stuff that the horror genre has been doing in recent years, which is we make a ton of movies and only a few of them are actually good because we're just, rolling the dice on low budgets. But that would have been a better use of this this particular element of creativity, this particular narrative that somebody wrote. Yeah, so if they just took out the bear, this would be a better movie. Still not a good one. Still one that's just sort of a very, low budget horror, but one that could work out, and it'd be more of a thriller than a horror at that point, because really the only horror is maybe a bear will show up and do something a bear would never do. One other thing about the reality of that, black bears are small. They're not like grizzly bears are big. Black bears are very small. I don't think any black bear on Earth has ever been anywhere near the size of this bear. This bear is the size of a grizzly or larger. Black bears are quite small, and the black bear, the real world cocaine bear, was quite small as well. It was about 175 pounds, which is about mid-range for like a late juvenile, early adult. I believe it's a female, which also tend to be smaller, but 175 pound bear. This is whatever the quote unquote bear in this movie is, at least 600 pounds. It's probably bigger. It's enormous. I just don't like the misappropriation of nature into things that nature doesn't do. I don't like that. I don't know why that bothers me so much, but it does. Anyway, yeah, this could have been better. It is better than I expected. I expected it to be a really cheap piece of crap, just like bear spends 90 minutes chasing people and mauling people in the woods, and it is better than that, ironically, because that part of it is the worst. So it could have been worse, but it definitely could have been better. Anyway, thank you guys for watching another episode of Solipsist Watched. I've been your host, the Social Solipsist, and I'll see you guys next time.